Members of the subcommittee,
Mr. Chairman.
the gentleman's recognized.
Thank you.
Good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We miss you on the Railroad Subcommittee. Mr. Daniels, Mr. Kraus, on this Starlink contract that my colleague was referring to, how does this Starlink contract compare to the normal FAA procurement process?
Congressman, thank you for the question. NACA doesn't involve ourselves. It's purely an FAA DOT question of how they assign and do those contracts.
So could anyone answer that question? Is this sort of normal process? Is this what we expect, or is it out of the norm?
Well, Carson, I just add that, if we've got a contract that's been in place for 15 years, the pace of modernization is that's completely out of cycle with it. So, we've got to replace the copper switches and probably to fiber optic, but we may be at a point in time where we need to look at SATCOM as a more efficient way to be able to deal with this. We're equipping a lot of our aircraft with satellite communications now, the big dishes that you see on top, whether it's GoGo, Starlink, others and everything. So, again, if it's competed fairly, we've got to be able to adapt to changes in technology. And right now, the procurement system that the FAA has is just not nimble enough to keep pace with technology. So again, if it's competed fairly and it helps us with better capability and it's at a lower cost, I think we need to look at it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Do you have any evidence that it's being competed fairly?
I couldn't hear you, sir.
Do you have any evidence that this is being competed fairly, as you asked, as you said?
I'm not privy to the process for the competition there.
You're not aware of any evidence to that fact? Air traffic controllers are currently receiving mixed messaging. They're receiving OPM buyout offers, 5 bullet point emails, but then they were told that those provisions and rules don't apply. Mr. Daniels, how does this confusion impact morale for an already overwhelmed workforce?
Congressman, thank you for the question. That's what I was going to start with. We're a 6-day work week, 60 hours a week, with some of the lowest staffing, and again, a resurgence of air traffic post-COVID to a liking that most people don't understand, didn't expect. Anything that disrupts, puts strain, pressure, stress on an air traffic controller, other than their normal lives that they go through every day, is an unnecessary risk to this system and should not be part of aviation at all.
I mean, I spoke with an air traffic controller last week whose baseline, whose normal life was 6-day weeks. Is that pretty typical?
Congressman, that's correct, and most people are mandated. Over 41% of our facilities, you are mandated and you only have 4 days off a month.
So if that's your baseline, 4 days off an entire month, then I gotta imagine that any additional stress is just not safe for our incredibly congested air system.
Congressman, I'd like to clarify that absolutely any additional risk to the system builds up, and that's what the output is safety. Safety is a varying degree of risk. Anything that helps us mitigate that risk and take away those stresses and pressures on air traffic controllers as we handle and move through this crisis, those hard-working men and women are shouldering every day and should be absolutely evaluated separately from any efforts that, again, add to it.
If the systems that the air traffic controllers use, Mr. Daniels, go down, radars and other systems, does that add stress to the system?
Congressman, I appreciate the question. Again, to understand the complexity of air traffic control, sometimes it's easier just to use a basic analogy. If you were to be driving down the roads at 70 miles an hour and I was sitting behind you and then I covered your eyes when you weren't ready and said, keep driving, that's what it's like for an air traffic controller to either lose communications or lose radar in a moment's notice, and that's the type of scramble we go into to make sure the flying public's safe.
Well, the problem is that Secretary Duffy claims that no air traffic controllers were fired by Mr. Musk, yet there are reports that there have been layoffs of FAA workers who fix these things, who fix radars and other air traffic control systems. This problem also happens in a government shutdown, when air traffic controllers are considered essential, but maintenance personnel are not. So when the system has a mechanical malfunction, it can't be repaired. So we have this situation that you've described where the system is so outdated and so old that maybe even the current procurement contract isn't going to modernize it enough. At the same time as you have air traffic controllers working a baseline of 6 days a week with 4 days off an entire month, And now you're saying that either Elon or the Republicans who shut down the government are going to put out of work the maintenance personnel. I mean, this just doesn't sound safe. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Any further questions from members of the subcommittee? Seeing none, this concludes our hearing. I want to thank each one of you for being here, and the committee